let's get into questions specifically about integrating psychedelics. One of the perspectives I've come to understand over the years is that if one is fortunate enough or sort of like experienced enough, or have others around them that are experienced enough, they recognize that preparation is sort of the best first step to a good integration experiences. Now, specifically to ayahuasca, before we start asking about integration in particular, is there anything that you've come to learn over the years to be sort of like, I guess, best practices for people with respect to preparing for an ayahuasca experience?
I love this question, actually, because generally speaking, we would say, like, yes, you should come to sessions, and then I have my own perspective of how to prepare. And I am, of course, developing my own method. And within my method, what I say is, okay, let's establish what are your stones. And let's set your stones in a cartography so that you map out what's your history to the extent that you're going to work, right? With the elements that you're going to work in the session, not the whole story of someone, but the main elements to work on, and also the elements that are most problematic, because these mapping of these elements allows you to, when you're in the session, remember your reasons why, your intention, if you had one, and be able to also allow yourself to wander around with other reasons that come up, but also being able to grab your stones back to ground yourself during the intake if it gets too strong. So for me, setting stones is one of the most important aspects to preparing. It also allows me to understand if someone is where they're at regarding their own history and how they are navigating their own history of whether that be trauma, whether that be, just other problematic situations or not that they have encountered throughout their lives. And that allows me also to understand how to guide that preparation and point out certain elements that they can take with them to the ceremony or to the intake to take into account, to have them, to prime their mind with, because I think priming the mind is important. Of course, sometimes you can just go open with an open mind and open heart and just see what you encounter. I would say that practice is more recommended for people who already have experiences with psychedelics. But why I say that I love this question very much is because I've come to the conclusion that if you have been doing work on yourself, the way in which you will be prepared to encounter the elements that you will during an intake, they're less likely to be as tough as someone who has no clue whatsoever of what their lives are, right?
As in, like, the difference between being sort of like knowing you're stepping in to encounter something difficult and being totally caught off guard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, because a lot of people nowadays, they come with me and they say, like, I just want to go into the psychedelic journey because I'm sure that the psychedelic's just going to save my life. It's just going to kind of shift, my whole perspective, and tomorrow I will be a different person. And it's a lot of work to actually get them to understand how psychedelics work and to get them to recognize that these are not magic pills, although a lot of people can have breakthroughs. It's a lot of work, and it's a very interesting and beautiful work, but it can also be something that's very confrontative, and that you will need other resources to face this confrontation with things that you probably never knew were there. So I've seen that the people who have been working on themselves, whether it be with, therapy along life or sometime, or whether they, are gifted enough or conscious enough to be able to grasp certain things that are bothering them, if they have this clarity or at least, some information about it, they're less likely to have a breakdown, let's call it this way, or remain in a crisis.
Mm. Or, perhaps get ultimately nothing out of the experience other than a big shebang and, back to square one a month later.